I've played Metal Gear Rising many times before, but because of its story and conversations, it is always more relevant, so I decided to replay it. But as to not make it boring, I decided to do a challenge run. I will start a complete fresh save and enter the Konami code to unlock Revengeance difficulty. This challenge is simple. Beat the game and the DLC on fresh Revengeance difficulty without the Fox Blade to not trivialize fight. And the second condition is to not use BP exploit glitches. The final rule I made is not to use the OP white body, since this just gives you way too many healing items, making the game much easier. And we're here for the challenge, of course, so let's begin. Prologue in this game is not much different than on New Game Plus, since there are no upgrades until Chapter 1. Starting with the first fight, I died right away due to missing the parry window, proving why this is going to be very difficult. I did win on the second try by executing perfect parry and insta-killing enemies. This gets me right to the first boss fight. The first fight went pretty smoothly despite me dying a couple of times, and most of my deaths are due to the most attacks in this difficulty being one-shots. Once I parried his head, his tail and destroyed his legs, I was able to do an epic finisher and finish the fight. Continuing onwards, chasing Sundowner leads me to the second fight against this boss. The second fight is arguably easier as long as you know how to stay in the air for a while longer to dodge the laser, which I learned how to do after a few retries, and then of course I did another epic finisher. Finishing this boss, I got to fight Sam. And of course I got my eye and arm cut off. Because of this minor inconvenience, I got upgraded with the new armor and proceeded to chapter 1. First battle in this chapter is really difficult since Revengeance difficulty introduces us to the monkey enemies who are just plain annoying. This being Revengeance difficulty, I of course die a few times until I clutch out a clutch victory due to a perfect parry. This parry is actually very difficult to execute because unlike blocking, the timing has to be correct here, which I can never get down, so I sometimes just get lucky. Using the perfect stealth, I saved this human, netting me some very nice extra BP. First Gecko in this chapter is really simple to kill since he always rushes you either at the start or after some time, allowing you to block and execute a finisher. The real problem are longsword soldiers. Against those two I barely clutched out since they block even parries, so I kinda just got lucky. Blade Wolf is easy boss to block and parry, and since Revengeance mode has increased damage to counterattacks, my counters onto him just delete its health. After dying a few times to a difficult to dodge and impossible to parry attack, I destroyed him. Next up is a helicopter fight. This one is honestly pretty easy as long as you don't miss your rocket launchers. You do get just enough rocket launchers by this point. I managed to save the next NPC by using the EM grenade, and after cutting off a left hand I did also the optional fight. Going through the gate I got a kiss, forcing me to make an excuse that I dodged a bullet, which then leads me to the first Grot fight. I get obliterated the first time but managed to avoid him the second time around by using stealth. I also defeated the optional helicopters for more BP. This fight went well. The first time around I cut one down with a few RPGs and rocket dash, and then 1-on-1 is just a joke of a fight. I purchased a few skills so I can actually parry in the air and to make some combos, and then I proceeded on towards the boss of this chapter. Going through the factory is easy. I just found one MIB stealing my strategies, so I killed him and proceeded my way onto the Mistral, the first real boss fight of this game. I died more than a dozen of times due to this boss just not fucking around.
Cannot be! Guys, what happened? What happened? What is going on? Raiden! This can't be happening! Raiden, respond! Raiden!
The real issue is the fact that my damage output is miserable since it's scaled for a fully upgraded weapon, which I currently cannot upgrade yet past +1 damage. This means that I have to survive quite a long time and I get killed in 1 or 2 hits. Luckily there are still 3 checkpoints in between, making this a little easier. The real challenge was really the third phase. I consider this boss being harder than Armstrong on this difficulty. After barely clutching a win with no healing items left and 1% of health, I cut her down, causing Dolzaev to blow himself up, finishing the first chapter. Disguising myself as Mariachi and not being suspicious at all, I enter the sewers. And of course the first fight has to be the monkey. Actually, the entire sewers are filled with them, making this quite difficult. After a few deaths, I beat them and proceeded my way deeper into the sewers, finding and saving George. Those machines were also quite difficult, but nowhere near the monkey level, though I did destroy them after a few tries. I made my way to the hidden laboratory, trying to avoid being seen, and then instantly got seen. Of course, luckily the human fights are quite easy due to me just being able to slide into them and cut them up instantly with a blade mode. I used whatever those things are called to unlock the doors and proceeded my way to the Twin Grot fight. This here shows why having Reaper mode on a New Game Plus or Fox Blade would make this game so much easier. But alas, I don't have that, so I had to fight them with under-leveled weapons. Having no easy way to do this fight since it was designed to be 1 vs 1 on normal and not 2 vs 1 as it is here. I just trialed and errored my way through until this one without health bar died, and then it was 1v1, which is not the worst as long as you keep up the pressure. I made my way to the lab and also killed the doctor by cutting George in half as a collateral. I upgraded my weapon to +2, my energy, health, and then proceeded to chapter 3 where I get my car blown up by corrupt cops. But of course I take my revenge on them instantly. I instantly got the flashback and I had to fight the Twin Grot boss fight again. Being just a little easier really doesn't say much, I still got obliterated quite a few times before actually killing them. I also had quite a few problems with beating the optional fight against 4 longsword enemies because they're just too relentless. After a few tries I stunned 3 of them with the EM grenade and then parried the 4th one into them, thinning their numbers. Then it was just a matter of cutting the rest of their hands and bodies. Going my way through the building, up the elevator and onto the rooftops, just imagine I didn't have too much trouble until I reached the first hammer enemies. It took quite a few tries until I realized that killing the flying enemies spawns additional hammer guys. So I first killed the first hammer guy before killing the flyers, and then it was much easier fighting against the 2 of them instead of 3. I proceeded my way on the rooftops and dropped down to the tunnel. This can be easy or very annoying depending on how good you are in stealth. Luckily I suck and barely killed those annoying monkeys after dying a few times. I finally proceeded to the surface. Fighting one grot on the bridge is a joke compared to any one of the other enemies like monkeys, hammer guys, and of course double grot. Grot is really not a difficult enemy as long as it's just one of them. I then received a health upgrade, making my health 150%, and made my way to the point of mental breakdown. Of course, walking very slowly and still having to kill enemies for extra BP is so annoying and slow, but I do it anyways, reaching the monsoon fight. Here I finally unlocked the real Jack the Ripper, and this changes the game completely. Increasing the damage to ridiculous amounts, acting as a Fox Blade Reaper mode is just too OP. So I break Monsoon as well as fill myself with health items from cutting those vehicles. I of course upgrade the weapon to +3 as well as life and fuel gauge. In chapter 4 I start by destroying the robot and killing all the soldiers with Zandatsu and triggering Reaper mode against the dogs, destroying them. I also finally have a use for electrolyte since now it insta enables Reaper mode. Before going into the elevator I destroyed everyone with the machine gun, but I did lose quite a few healing items in the process, because avoiding damage here is almost impossible, especially against the grot shooting at me. I have a fight against many dangerous enemies when I exit the elevator, but with the help of a Reaper mode and of course a few deaths, this is standard at this point, I made short work of them and proceeded to the section of running up the building. I had no trouble with this section, it's just epic. I then proceeded to the Japanese garden. This part however is very difficult. I just hate those monkey enemies and it doesn't help that the garden is filled with them. Of course I proceed through with the help of the stealth, but it wasn't easy. I then reached the famous elevator fight. The first parts are easy due to my Reaper mode, but I had to be quick to get all the possible fights completed, since when the elevator is slowed down that part is still a ranked section, which you have to be very quick at killing enemies. Luckily I didn't have too much trouble here, it's just the final stretch that was giving me trouble. Can you guess why? Yep, the monkeys of course. As I didn't have any more items that restored the fuel gauge, it made this fight quite a lot more difficult, but of course I eventually beat it. Reaper mode is just really busted. The next fight is of course against Mistral and Monsoon clones. While Mistral is still annoying because of her blocking, she's much easier compared to the first boss fight. She takes much more damage and Monsoon takes even more, so he's even easier. I did beat them on the 4th try, and honestly after I killed Mistral I already won, since Monsoon really is a joke as long as you have the EM grenades, which I did. Then I finally reached the Sundowner who invited me to the roof. Of course I obliged. Funnily enough, this boss was much easier than I remembered. I only needed to be careful not to hit the shield, and I cut it off very quickly, forcing him to a second phase. He's a bit more aggressive in this one, but you can also be more aggressive since you have no danger of hitting his shield. I did die once in the second phase due to missing the parry window, but on the second try I defeated him, and of course cut him to pieces. Going to chapter 5, I bought Sundowner's weapon specifically for the Metal Gear fight and upgraded it. Starting chapter 5, falling down the chopper and somehow surviving, I got cut down instantly. And of course I took my Revengeance the second time around and proceeded through this chapter. This is honestly one of the shortest chapters in the game, so there's not much to be said. I found some extra health and failed to protect this civilian. Honestly, I still have no idea how to do that without the Fox Blade, but nothing of value was actually lost. And then I of course had to fight the hardest optional fight in the game, 3 monkeys in a very small room. Of course I died, forcing me to not only restart this fight, but the entire section leading to this room. So more stealth and more monkeys as well as Grot. Being so annoyed, I just grabbed the BP chest and went to finish the chapter without beating them. I also didn't have any more fuel restoring items, so this would make this fight even harder, honestly not worth it. I then take the bike and proceeded my way to Sam. While you would think this fight to be much harder fight, I deleted half his HP in one hit. The increased damage of the Reaper mode combined with the parry of the Revengeance difficulty just does insane damage. I almost beat him on the first try, but just failed at the finish line. While I did beat him on the 4th try, I came very close every single time. The counter damage of Revengeance is just very insane. I finally stabbed and killed him, making this the end of chapter 6 and the start of the final chapter. I upgraded pincer blades to +4, enough to destroy Metal Gear, and started the chapter. First fight of this chapter is just very easy since they're just generic soldiers, and going through the whole hangar part I could just stealth my way through, picking up my final health upgrade as well. Right before fighting Metal Gear Excelsius, I killed the final MIB, sadly missing one, not getting me the reward. But I have done that on the other save file, so no worries. The first phase is not even difficult, so I beat that first one very easily to the first checkpoint, cutting off the first leg. The second phase is much harder due to geckos, but besides of that, not really that difficult. With pincer blades my damage output was quite high, but I did fail a few times, not because actually failing, but because I used the final healing item I had, which was the only one and I needed it for Armstrong. After dealing with the gecko part, I won quite easily, cutting off the second leg and proving I'm stronger than that machine. I destroyed it with its own blade and finished it off, making Armstrong come out. At this point I just cannot get hit until the final showdown, because of one healing item, and max health doesn't even matter when you're on Revengeance difficulty against Armstrong. I used the blades to trigger the cutscene and then had to survive him for like 3 minutes without getting hit. Luckily dodge counter skill proves very useful here, and without it the game would probably be unbeatable. After a few fails I finally did it. In my opinion this being much harder than the final showdown. After this, and after getting the
This isn't my sword,
we finally face off one last time. This was actually difficult. It took me more than 1.5 hours to beat this part. Having only one healing item doesn't help as well, and me doing pitiful damage due to my sword being at base power. The only saving grace is the counter damage on this difficulty, otherwise it would just be plain impossible. I had to hope for this attack and then try to beat him without being hit more than once. I could get the healing items by cutting the things he throws at me, but I just suck at cutting them, and this caused me more fails than actually just avoiding them and beating him without those healing items. After many tries I finally beat him and performed as Andatsu and finishing the game. But of course there's still the DLC. So I started with the Sam one. Sam DLC plays quite differently and requires you to perfect parry much more often because of course you have no Reaper mode. You only really have the taunt, which makes enemies become more aggressive and deal more damage, but also take more damage. I would say this is much harder than Raiden's part. I started with the first VR mission for extra health, but in the end I'll start skipping them for obvious reasons. I did beat it after a few failures and went on to the first boss fight, the talking machine dog. Since this is the Revengeance mode, if I can taunt him and then parry, I'll just delete his HP, otherwise, well, it's too difficult. After many failures, I finally learned the parry timing and just did that until it was destroyed. I proceeded onward through the sewers and to the elevator where I died many times due to the longsword guys being very difficult to successfully parry. After a success, I finally reached Metal Gear A. I couldn't beat him for the love of me when I taunted him because it was just too aggressive, even if I do much more damage. And then I just decided to do it without taunting. I just hack his legs and destroy them with the charge attack. Luckily blocking him at least stuns him. After I cut him to half I proceeded onward grabbing more fuel gauge and health upgrades. I also lost against the Grad boss and then stealthed my way through to avoid spawning it. I know I'll miss BP that way, but in the end you can't upgrade Sam, so it really doesn't matter. I made my way through the Japanese garden and many annoying geckos, who took quite a few tries to perfectly parry and kill. I tried beating more VR missions, but then I realized they're just way too hard and they would take way too long for minimal gains, so I skipped them from now on. Beating other enemies wasn't that hard, and then of course the monkeys. I had to kill them to get the correct code and finally reach Armstrong. Oh, Armstrong, I can't say who's harder, the Raiden one or this one. While I had to taunt him to actually do decent damage, at the same time this killed me many times. I beat the first phase, but there was one issue: I used up all the healing items, and the checkpoint triggered, forcing me to fight him with just whatever I get in the fight. This was very bad, since I couldn't beat him with that low amount of healing. So after many failures I decided to replay the whole chapter, and this time to beat the first phase, which is much easier without expending too many healing items. This time I started the second phase with 4 healing items, which enabled me to actually finally beat him after a few tries. When I finally beat him I had precisely 0 healing items left, so replaying the chapter was much needed. I cut off Armstrong's hand, making it very sharp, allowing him to cut off my arm. Not having much of a choice, I agreed to help Armstrong, marking the difficult and much better DLC as completed. Next one was the Blade Wolf one. This one actually starts off very boring, wasting my time with many VR missions, especially this one. After VR missions I had to stealth most of my way through the breach and to reach the boss Thompson. Wolf can't really fight well, so each time I failed at stealth I had to retry it until I did it perfectly with a few exceptions. After getting through the breach and through the building I finally reached the boss. While the music is epic, the boss is a bit meh. It doesn't help that even boss has stealth gimmick. I didn't have much trouble though with this boss, since you get way too many healing items during this boss and I could get hit many more times. After much damage trading with him, I finally defeated him and cut him into many pieces. I became Mistral's servant, finishing this DLC and Wolf's flashback, beating this run on Revengeance difficulty. Honestly, this run was fairly doable but caused many deaths, a few hundred at least through the entire game. Really difficult parts were really only the monkeys, double Grot fight and Mistral, as well as of course Armstrong. With Sam it was mostly just learn how to perfect parry and of course how to beat the Armstrong. And of course there are also VR missions which are very difficult, but I just ignored them after the first. As for Blade Wolf DLC, this was mostly just easy and boring, as there is not really much fighting since you'll die if you try to fight most of the time. So can you beat Metal Gear Rising Revengeance on a fresh save Revengeance difficulty? Of course you can, but prepare to die a lot. If you like this video and wanna see more of this, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps me keep making more videos like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Now go!